Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May Brahman protect us both, the teacher and the disciple. May he nourish us both. May we both work together with great energy. May our studies be vigorous and fruitful. May we not hate or criticize each other. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Last month in our Raja Yoga talk, we finished sutras 47 to 46 to 49. So today we'll be starting with Sutra 50. In this 49th Sutra, Patanjali said that after getting established in posture, that's asana, we start the practice of pranayama, control of prana. And in our last talk, we saw that prana is the sum total of the cosmic energy, though usually it is translated as breath. Prana is just a general name, while there are 5 different names given to it depending upon the activity for which this energy is used. When this energy in the human body is used for breathing and functioning of the heart, it's called prana. When that energy causes the circulation of blood and other body fluids, it's called vyana. When that energy is used for the purpose of eating, drinking, procreating, the energy is called apana. And when that energy used for the actions of talking, singing, etc., then it's called udana. And when it is used for digesting food, that energy is called samana. Among all these 5 categories or different functions, the function of breathing is the most important. That's why usually we translate prana as breath. The manifestation of prana in the human body that we can most easily detect is the movement of the lungs. Prana is the muscular energy which moves the lungs, and the movement of the lungs draws in air. So actually pranayama is controlling the muscular power which moves the lungs. It's not actually controlling the breath or breathing, but it's actually controlling the muscular power which moves the lungs. So Swami Vivekananda says, the breath is that flywheel, supplying and regulating the motive power to everything in this body. And we also saw that for practicing pranayama, we have to be in the right posture, that body has to be kept straight, erect. The neck, chest, and the head should be in one straight line. Sitting in a hunch posture and trying to meditate, it's not correct, it is not proper. And Swamiji says, anytime you sit crookedly and try to meditate, you do yourself an injury. So when you try to meditate, and before that meditation you try to do pranayama, you should be sitting straight with your head, neck, and chest in one straight line. And then we start breathing rhythmically. The way we usually breathe is very irregular. Humans normally breathe 12 to 15 times per minute under stress anger, anxiety, that number can increase up to 20. So, by taking deep, long breaths and slowing down the number of breathing, the body and mind gets healthier. So, slowing the breath is taking steady, slow breathing is the first step in the process of pranayama. That we saw in the last talk, we saw how we take in breathing through one nose and then breathe out through the other on a slow, steady fashion. Now, Paranjali, in the next Sutra 50, Paranjali speaks about the other process of pranayama involved in the practice of pranayama. So, Sutra 50 says, Bahyabhandara stambha vritti deshakala sankhyaabhi paridrishto dirgha sukshmaha. Its modifications are either external or internal. It's modifications of pranayama, either external or internal or motionless, regulated by place, time, and number, either long or short. Now, this needs explanation. So, Swamiji says the three sorts of motion of pranayama are one by which we draw the breath in, another by which we throw it out, and the third action is when the breath is held in the lungs or stopped from entering the lungs. So the three ways of pranayama. First one, we draw the breath in, another we throw it out, and the third is where the breath is held in the lungs or stopped from entering the lungs. And just breathing in is not simply breathing in, there's a process there. So what they say is usually close the right nostril with a thumb, like this, as we usually do in the meditation day. Hiroka does that for us. Right, close the right nostril with a thumb and breathe into the left nostril for, say, 4 seconds. Then close the left nostril also and keep it closed for 15 seconds. Then breathe out through the right nostril. Open the left one, breathe out to the right nostril for 8 seconds. So you are breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 16 seconds, and breathing out for 8 seconds. Now this breathing in, the inhalation, is called in Sanskrit Puraka, the technical terms. And exhalation is called Rechaka, and withholding, that's holding the breath in the lungs, is called Kumbhaka, or holding the breath in or out is called Kumbhaka. Now the process has to be reversed. That is, you are breathing in through the right nostril for 4 seconds, again holding the breath for 16 seconds, and breathing out through the left nostril for 8 seconds. These two together form one pranayama. According to Raja Yoga, there are two nerve currents in the spinal column called Ida and Pingala. Ida on the left and Pingala on the right. And in the middle, there's a hollow passage called Sushumna. There's a huge reservoir of spiritual energy situated at the base of the spine, and it's called Kundalini. That means, literally, it means that which is coiled up. So because it is translated as coiled up, often it is called the serpent power. Swami Vivekananda has explained in detail in his Raja Yoga. He has used 3 chapters to speak about prana and pranayama. So in his the chapter called Control of Psychic Prana, Swamiji says, The first lesson is to a breathe in a measured way, in and out. This will harmonize the system. When you have practiced this for some time, you will do well to join to it the repetition of some word as Om or any other sacred word. So Swamiji is, you have to remember Swamiji is giving this lecture in the West. So people who are completely not used to these things at that time, more than 100 years ago, 125 years ago. So Swamiji is saying first breathe in and breathe out in a measured way, and after practicing it for some time, add the word Om to it. As you breathe in, repeat Om, and as you breathe out, say Om. In India, we use certain symbolical words instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4. When he says breathe in for 4 seconds, you can say 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead of that, repeat Om for four times. That is why I advise you to join the mental repetition of Om or some other sacred word to the pranayama. Let the word flow in and out with the breath, rhythmically, harmoniously, and you will find the whole body is becoming rhythmical. Then you will learn what rest is. Swamiji is saying, you breathe in rhythmically in and out with the chant of Om, and the body gets real rest. Then you will learn what rest is. Compared with it, sleep is not rest. Once this rest comes, the most tired nerves will be calmed down, and you will find that you have never before really rested. After practicing the above mentioned breathing for a few days, you should take up a higher one. Now come the next one. Slowly fill the lungs with breath through Ida, the left nostril. And at the same time, concentrate the mind on the nerve current. You are, as it were, sending the nerve current down the spinal column, striking violently on the last plexus, the basic lotus, which is triangular in form, the seat of the Kundalini. Then hold the current there for some time. Imagine that you are slowly drawing that nerve current with the breath through the other side, the Pingala. Then slowly throw it out through the right nostril. This you will find a little difficult to practice. See, there is a lot of imagination involved in all things. You are imagining that you are sending the current through the spinal column to the bottom of the base of the spine to the seat of Kundalini, and then drawing it up. So breathing in through the right and left and breathing out through the right is not easy. So Swamiji says the easiest way is to stop the right nostril with the thumb, then slowly draw in the breath through the left. Then close both nostrils with thumb and forefinger and imagine that you are sending that current down, striking the base of the Sushumna. That is holding the breath inside. Then take the thumb off and let the breath out through the right nostril. Next, inhale slowly through that nostril, keeping the other closed by the forefinger. Then close both as before. The way the Hindus practice this would be very difficult for this country because they do it from their childhood and their lungs are prepared for it. Here it is well to begin with 4 seconds and slowly increase. Draw in for 4 seconds, hold in 16 seconds, then throw out in 8 seconds. This makes one pranayama. This has to be practiced for some time and only very, very slowly, and after some practice for quite a few long time should we increase the time and the number. In ordinary people, they say this Sushumna remains closed, the passage. The yogi has it open. When the Kundalini is aroused, it travels up the spine through the six centers of consciousness to the seventh. The seventh, the center at the brain. How the breath or the prana travels, the Kundalini travels up the different centers. Sri Ramakrishna has explained so many times in the gospel. We can see how he in the Kundalini, and the psychic energy is roused from the bottom of the spine and at the center called Muladhara, and then it travels step by step. And what all they each, as the energy travels up, the yogi has different spiritual experiences. He describes all that. To quote what Sri Ramakrishna says, in the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna says, the scripture speaks of seven centers of consciousness. The mind may dwell in any one or the other of the centers. When the mind is attached to worldliness, it dwells in the three lower centers. At the navel, the organ of reproduction and the organ of evacuation. They are the three lower centers. The bottommost, when we say at the navel, the organ of reproduction, organ of evacuation, it is positions equal in the spine, equal to corresponding to these places. The mind then has no higher spiritual ambition or vision. It is immersed in the cravings of lust and greed. In most of the vast majority of human beings, the mind is on these three lower centers. That is Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, and Manipura. The fourth center is at the heart. When the mind learns to dwell there, man experiences his first spiritual awakening. When the mind has risen to the heart center, the aspirant has spiritual awakening. Then he has a vision of light all around. Seeing this divine light, he becomes filled with wonder and says, "Ah, how blissful." His mind does not run then to the lower centers. His mind is mostly in the heart, the level of the heart center, doesn't go down. And he has his first spiritual awakening, he is seeing light all around. The fifth center is at the throat. He whose mind has reached this center is freed from ignorance and delusion. He does not enjoy hearing or talking of anything but God. See, that person, once the mind has reached the level of the center at the throat, his mind won't come down. He does not enjoy any talk other than of God, of spiritual matters. Does not go down to the lower levels at all. The sixth center is at the forehead. When the mind reaches this center, there is the direct vision of God, day and night. Even then, there is a little trace of ego left in the aspirant. He hasn't had the final illumination. There is a little trace of ego left there. It is like a light in the lantern. One feels as if one could touch the light, but cannot because of the obstructing pane of glass. The slight veil of ignorance is still there. Ego is left there. The seventh center is at the top of the head. When the mind reaches it, samadhi is attained. One becomes a knower of Brahman, united with Brahman. That is at the top of the head. When the mind reaches there, the person goes into samadhi. But these are all details of how the advanced stages of pranayama happen, rousing the kundalini. And these should not be practiced without the constant supervision of an experienced teacher because it's extremely dangerous. Not just it's hard, it is dangerous. People who read the book on Raja Yoga and practice this breathing exercise or pranayama without proper guidance, proper discipline, they may have nervous problems, they may go insane, they may even cause and end up in death. So this energy is not something to be played with. It's extremely dangerous. So this should be practiced only under the constant supervision of an experienced, competent teacher. In one of the books, one of the Swami has written, there are mail order teaching of pranayama. It's all dangerous. This is playing with fire. It end up in disaster. So you have to be very, very careful. When Swami Vivekananda was, after giving these lectures on Raja Yoga, when he was teaching them, he asked them to come to this place where he was staying and taught them under the his direct supervision, how to do this pranayama and everything, not in the public hall. No, so reading books, we should not go for practicing these higher states of pranayama. The simple one, just breathing in through one, taking regular rhythmic breathing through breathing in through one nostril and breathing out through the other, that's harmless. It just clears the obstructions on the nerve current, and it helps in calming down the mind. There is no harm in that. But these high details, what we read Swamiji's, should not be practiced just by reading the books. That's why Patanjali does not say all these things, does not go into the details. He just mentions the three processes of pranayama. And the aim of these processes are to rouse the kundalini. And again, this sutra said, its modifications are either external or internal or motionless. That is Puraka, Rechaka, and Kumbhaka, regulated by place, time, and number. Place, time, and number. That is external. First, we'll see external and internal. When the lungs have been emptied and then the breathing stopped, that is external. When the breathing is stopped after breathing in, after inhalation, then it's called internal. The third, the motionless, is where the breath is kept out without entering the lungs. Swamiji says, the next breathing is slowly drawing the breath in and then immediately throwing it out slowly. And then stopping the breath out using the same numbers. See, earlier what we said was breathing in, hold it, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 16 seconds, then breathe out for 8 seconds. Now the other one is breathing in slowly, draw the breath in, then immediately throw it out slowly, and then stopping the breath out using the same number. That means you breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe out for 8 seconds, and then stop the breath from entering for 16 seconds. The only difference, Swamiji continues, the only difference is that in the first case, the breath was held in, and in the second, held out. The last is the easier one. The breathing in which you hold the breath in the lungs must not be practiced too much. See, three types of breathing have been mentioned here. The first one is just breathing in and breathing out. Second one is breathe in, hold, then breathe out. The third one is breathe in, breathe out, and then hold. Breath is kept out. So Swamiji is saying the last one is easy, where the second one, where you're holding the breath inside, should not be practiced too much. And then what is regulated by place, time, and number? These three practices of pranayama are for the purification of the nerves, and they can be varied by place, time, and number. Swamiji says by place is meant where the prana is held at some particular part of the body. By time is meant how long prana should be confined to a certain place. So where do you keep the prana? How long do you keep the prana? It changes. And so we are told how many seconds to keep one motion, how many seconds to keep another motion. And what's the result of all this pranayama? The result of this pranayama is Udgadha, awakening the Kundalini. Now, holding the breath in one place in the body, the yogi can, if the yogi has got some illness, can cure himself by holding the breath in one place. When Sri Ramakrishna was really sick towards the end of his life with cancer, throat cancer, all the treatments, nothing is working. One day, a Pandit who had come at Sri Ramakrishna earlier, Pandit Sachathar, he's a great scholar, he came to see Sri Ramakrishna. And then the Pandit said, "Sir, a yogi like you can heal yourself, cure yourself. If you just concentrate your mind on the sore in the throat, you can heal yourself, because the prana the idea is the prana goes there and heals itself. Because it's here to remember, prana is not just breath, it is the energy within the body." So Sri Ramakrishna asked him, "What sort of a Pandit are you? You say you are a scholar. The mind which is given to God, do you want me to take it and put it on this body?" Then the Pandit was speechless. How could he say? You cannot say no. You have to take the body. As far as Sri Ramakrishna is concerned, the body is useless. Its purpose is done, finished. So what is the need? Let it go. But it is possible. The yogis can do that. Concentrate on one particular part of the body. If any illness there, that can be healed, cured. Now we come to the next sutra, Sutra 51. Bahyabhyantara Vishayakshapi Chaturthaha. The fourth is restraining the prana by reflecting on external or internal object. So in the previous sutra, Patanjali mentioned three types of pranayama. Now here comes the fourth one. The fourth is restraining the prana by reflecting on external or internal object. That is, in this type, fourth type, Kumbhaka is brought about naturally, holding the breath. Kumbhaka, remember, you are holding the breath. It happens naturally. In the other three processes, it's done consciously by the power, by willpower. You are consciously willing it, holding the breath consciously. Whereas in this case, the fourth type, it happens naturally. When an aspirant has gained complete control over the prana through long practice, or when the aspirant has reached a high state of spiritual development through devotion to God. There is no need for practicing pranayama, that just devotion to God. Then his breathing may stop of its own accord when he is absorbed in concentrating on God. So Swamiji says, that reflection or concentration on external or internal object is absent in the other three. The other three, where you are breathing in, breathing out, holding the breath, all that. There is no idea of concentrating on an object, whether external or internal. But here, that kumbhaka or stoppage of breathing happens just by concentrating on an object. It's almost you can say this is the path of bhakti, devotion to God. Here, concentration is on the form of God, whether you are concentrating inside you in the mind, or you are concentrating on a form, an image kept in front of you outside. And this kumbhaka, or the stoppage of breath, can happen for few seconds, few minutes, and in the case of samadhi, it can continue for a few hours even. And the person may not be even aware of it. If we see so many instances in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, in the gospel we can see, when you go read the gospel, you can see many times, Sri Ramakrishna is talking to the devotees about God, and suddenly his breathing stops. He stops talking, and the devotees look at him. He has stopped breathing. He's sitting there like a statue, no motion. Or maybe somebody may be singing some devotional songs, just listening to that devotional song. Sri Ramakrishna goes into this trance. Or he may be singing a devotional song, suddenly he stops singing, he can't sing anymore. And stops breathing. Even when Sri Ramakrishna was sick and the doctor was coming to treat him, even it has happened then, and the doctor could not believe. He was talking to the doctor, and suddenly he has stopped talking and just motionless. So they tested, the two doctors were there, doctor who was treating him and a friend of his had come. They tested his heart beating, his pulse, using the stethoscope, nothing. They could not feel any pulse, no heartbeat. Then one of the doctors, Mahendranath Sarkar, put his finger on Sri Ramakrishna's eyes. The eyes was open. Into the eyeball, poked his eyeball with his finger. No motion, no reaction. As so completely dead to the world. This is all happened by the concentration of mind on the divine. So Sri Ramakrishna says, if a man is able to weep for God, he will see him. He will go into samadhi. A man achieves kumbhaga, that is breathing or stopping of the breathing, without practice. There's no need for practice of all these yoga practices. Without a yogic practice, a man achieves kumbhaga if he but weeps for God. The next stage is samadhi. Without going through this process of all the yogic practices, you can reach that stage just by devotion to God. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. It's not dangerous, because it happens only when the person has sufficiently advanced on the spiritual path. And so the nerves can withstand it. The earlier one, we said it's dangerous, you should not practice so much, because we are consciously, by the power of the will, you are doing that, stopping the breath. Whereas here it is happening naturally. The mind is so much absorbed in the thought of God that it stops breathing. So it can happen only when you have advanced quite a bit on the spiritual path. So they say it's not dangerous. And what happens with all this pranayama? That Patanjali says in the next sutra, Sutra 52, Tatakshiyate prakashavaranam. From that, the covering to the light of the chitta is attenuated. The covering to the light of the chitta is attenuated. So Swamiji explains, the chitta has by its own nature all knowledge. It is made of sattva particles, but is covered by rajas and tamas particles, and by prana covering is removed. The chitta, the mind, knowledge, because knowledge is our nature. It's made of sattva particles but covered by rajas and tamas particles. That is, the inner light, the light of spiritual discrimination between the real and the unreal, is covered by ignorance. Everybody has got that light within us. But in the vast majority of people, that light is covered by ignorance. And what causes the ignorance? The ignorance is produced by the results of our past karma, or samskara, or inherent tendencies. And as pranayama purifies the mind, the ignorance is gradually removed. The coverings of rajas and tamas can be compared to white and dark clouds that cover the sun. Whether it is white cloud or whether it is dark cloud, the sunlight is covered. The sun is, when we can't get the sunlight. So that whether they are positive thoughts or negative thoughts. Rajasic covering, maybe we can say it is positive thoughts. Tamasic covering, negative thoughts. But both cover the light of consciousness. When through the practice of pranayama, the mind gets purified and these coverings are removed or get lost. Any thought, if we try to remove from our mind, if you have tried, we will see that if you consciously try to remove, the thought becomes stronger, because thoughts get power or become stronger by when we show interest and pay attention. If some thought comes to our mind, you're not interested, you don't pay any attention to it, after some time, the thought disappears. But if you show interest into that thought, particular thought, or pay attention to it, then it becomes stronger. So when we try to remove the thought consciously, that means you are paying attention to it. So that it is not possible to consciously remove it. When you pay attention, it becomes strong. So the only way to remove the thought is ignore it. Don't pay any attention. Slowly, it will just disappear because it's not getting any nourishment. You are not paying attention to it. You are not showing any interest to it. So it dies a natural death. In pranayama, in what we mentioned earlier, that fourth type, we are concentrating all our attention on the divine, on the inner light. So the thoughts don't get any nourishment, any strength. So they naturally become less and less, weaken and weaken and weaken, they just disappear. That is why Patanjali says, from that, the covering to the light of chitta is attenuated. And there is one more result from this practice of the pranayama that is said in the next sutra, Sutra 53, Dharanasu cha yogyata manasaha. The mind becomes fit for dharana. That is, the pranayama helps the mind get concentrated by enabling it to have sharp, clear mental images. Now when we try to concentrate, say suppose we are trying to concentrate on our chosen ideal, the form of God that we like most. It's not clear. We get as often if those who try to practice will know, we get very, very hazy picture, not at all clear, blurred picture of whatever our ideal is. We are trying to think of it. We don't get a clear picture. But through practice of pranayama, the mind becomes purified. And then this image becomes sharp. You get a very clear picture, and that helps in concentration. Then you can concentrate the mind very well on that. Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, they are the last 3 steps in the 8 steps of the yoga. And Dharana comes after Pratyahara, which is the 5th step. Now, Pranayama is the 4th step. Yet remember, we had come through the first 2, Yama and Niyama, that is the moral principles, which are the basic foundation without which yogic practice can be done. Then comes asana, posture. You need the posture because you have to sit properly, only then you can meditate. Then fourth is pranayama, controlling the breath, controlling the prana through controlling the breath. Because breathing is the grossest form of expression of prana, manifestation of prana. And then the 5th step is pratyahara, that is drawing in of the sense organs from sense objects. The last 3, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. That we'll do the pratyahara, the 5th step, in the next class.
Thanks for attending on a rainy Sydney spring day. Also, thanks to those who have joined us by YouTube. And I'll just make some announcements about what's coming up. We have the weekly yoga class this coming Thursday from 10 to 11:15 a.m. Next Friday night, we'll have the fortnightly Bhagavad Gita discussion and class led by Gayatriprana. And next Sunday, we'll have a talk on the path of knowledge, a bird's eye view. And that will be given by Pravrajika Gayatriprana. And please note that we've got the Kali Puja celebration coming up in 2 weeks' time on the 15th of November. And we've got a very special program. We're very happy to announce that Tanim Hayat Khan will be coming to share a Sarod recital with us. And we'll have talks by Dr. Shankar Karunanati and Gayatriprana. And as we do, we will have a candlelight offering to Mother Kali. And you're invited to bring some sweets or savouries to share. So that's on the 15th of November. And now for those of you who are with us here in Vedanta Hall, we will be having a question-answer discussion time facilitated by Dr. Dilip.